just find it actually quite sickening, because there is a mental health crisis within veterinarians that people don't seem to realize, and vets are actually trying their best. No one has done this for the money. If they were going to do it for the money, they didn't choose very well. Like, honestly, they could have been investing or banking or, all sorts of things that would have been a lot easier than being a vet. The hardest part of the job, there are animals that you can't help, and that can be really hard. So I guess just trying your best, and sometimes that's not good enough, and that's really, really hard.
What does it take to pour your heart into a career that asks for everything of you, and then find the courage to put it all on paper for the world to see? Welcome to the Pause and Effect podcast. I'm Dr. Cara, and this is the podcast where we pull back the curtain on veterinary life. The messy, the beautiful, the heartbreaking truth of it. My guest today is Dr. Caity and Venniker, veterinarian and author of Unleashed, a vet's memoir of heartache, hairballs and hope. A book that has landed News 24 Book of the Month and cracked the top 15 in South Africa non-fiction in its first week, and has vets and animals alike saying, finally, someone said it. Let's welcome Dr. Caity. A very warm welcome to Dr. Caity and Venniker.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank
you have
you.
had your book published.
Yeah, it's been an exciting journey.
It's phenomenal. I've read it, as have many people, and you are getting crazy feedback. Great feedback.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
been really great.
Book of the Month, News 24. Book of the Month.
Book of the Month for News 24. It was an exclusive books recommends, which was really exciting. And in its first week, it was number 13 of adult nonfiction in South Africa. So I was really happy about that. Yeah,
You must be so proud.
very, very happy with how it's gone. I've been so pleased. It was a bit of a road getting here, so it's been really great. But it's done so well.
So the book is called Unleashed, and it's a memoir. It's a memoir of a vet's, I'm going to show you, for those who are watching, a vet's memoir of heartache, hairballs, and hope. If you have not read it, now's the time. Why did you write this book?
It's such a funny story because I actually always wanted to write a novel, and that was my dream, to kind of be in the fiction sort of side of things. And then I'd obviously become a vet, and then COVID hit, and I was in another country, and I'd become a mom, and I was a little bit lost about what I was kind of doing with my life. I wasn't registered to work at that time, and I was deep in the sort of new mom place, which can be a difficult place to be sometimes. So I started writing again, and I entered some competitions, and that went well. So I looked for the next step, and I did a writing course with Mike Nickel, who is a really good writer. He's written all sorts of different, I think over 30 different kinds of books. Unfortunately or fortunately, his fiction class was closed. So he had his nonfiction class, which I joined, and the rest is history. He just said, you must keep going with this. And he was really supportive and encouraging. And so I carried on, and eventually it became a book.
So who's it aimed at?
So, I'm trying to kind of tread the line, because I really feel loyal to vets, and I wanted a book for them, but I also feel like it's kind of for the public, and that I want to explain a vet's perspective. So it was very important to me that non-vets could understand and follow the stories as well. So I suppose it's really just for animal lovers, for people who care about animals and have lost animals, and those are.
So, you talk a lot about your journey of becoming a vet. You talk obviously about motherhood now within our conversation, but this is your early days of getting
very
into vet
much the early days. Yeah, I wanted to focus on that. It's quite a exciting and vulnerable time. It's a very vivid time of life. Vet schools. So it's such an incredible experience going there. You learn so much, and then those first few years, you're kind of trying to find your feet, and you really, I think you get affected a lot by your cases, by your animals. Everything's new. So it was more about that kind of coming of age kind of story, I guess.
It's beautifully written. And there's just so much humor in it. Well, how did you balance the humor? And obviously there's a lot of emotional content there too. Yeah,
it was meant to kind of be more humorous. But of course, with veterinary work, you're always going to get the really sad side of things coming in as well. Our jobs, they have very much that emotional side. So that came in more and more. And actually, I had to limit myself, because there are obviously cases where you lose the animal, and I couldn't actually bring too many of them in. I had to kind of look at how many sections in the book there were and how many I could let creep in, and kind of be quite, because it is hard. And then obviously I find it just in being a vet that there's a lot of that balance. You have a lot of heartache as a vet, but there's so much good humor around practices and sharing and joking around. So it was kind of reflecting just real life as a vet, I guess, to have both sides of it.
I mean, there's one thing that we often hear as veterinarians is we'll get clients or friends, whatever, saying, oh, I wanted to be a vet.
Yes.
How many vets say, I could write a book?
So many vets say they could write a book, and I think they could. And I think some of them have. And so I think we have so many stories. I just, the ones we obviously really know are the James Herriot ones, which are a little bit older. It's the male perspective, it's English. So it was really fun to just do female South African version, a little bit more modern, and kind of just go lean into that,
Love it. So before I get stuck in and obviously throw a gazillion questions, would you mind reading a little extract?
Not at all. Let me find a little extract.
Tell me why you've selected this part.
Okay, so I selected this part just because it was kind of just a fun little part where I felt like it reflected the tone of the book quite well. It's not particularly crucial in terms of what happens in terms of the whole book, but I did like it just as a fun little extract. And it's from a time when I was working in Johannesburg at a mixed practice, and it's about a difficult horse. So here goes.
Go for it.
Rita was not lavish with praise. Even with Helen, who was clearly her favorite, she didn't dish it out. So on the occasion when you did get some kind of recognition, you wanted to write that shit down. Keep it in a small box in your bedside table. Take it out every now and then to mull it over, relive the moment. Not that I did that, I'm just saying. When Rita called me aside that morning, I had a fleeting sense of panic. Caity, Rita's voice was low. You know that Patronage horse, the one for the injections? I nodded. We all knew him. Patronage had clear ideas about injections, mainly that he didn't need any. He's, Rita hesitated, tricky. He is quite, I said, the understatement of the year. He'd started off tricky when we first stitched up a wound on his leg, but then we'd had sedation on our side. Over the course of daily antibiotic injections, he'd progressed from bulky to bolshy to downright mutinous. I think you should go. Okay, I said without enthusiasm. You know horses. Rita looked around to check that no one was within earshot. I think it might be best for you to do it. I nodded solemnly. I understand. It was a smooth move. Frankly, when she put it like that, I felt kind of honored to be sent off to the most difficult horse of the practice. So what if patronage was a half-ton of hostility? I felt special. Liking horses is not something you want to go on about because horsey chicks don't have a great reputation. At Onderstepoort, wearing a cap that said outriding was social suicide. The Afrikaans boys would shake their heads, mutter darkly, horse bevolk, and your only friends would be other girls with the same kind of caps. So I picked the sawdust out of my hair, sprayed myself down with deodorant when I left the stables. But there were signs. The South African Derby is my favorite day of the year. Before the main event, the commentator recites the poem The Horse, and it never goes well for me. Usually around, there is nothing so powerful, nothing less violent. There is nothing so quick, nothing more patient. I start falling apart. Because it's true. If you look at a cow, it's a practical structure. The skeleton is a scaffold for a complex set of stomachs and an udder. A cow is a simple functional unit. Likes grass, says moo, the end. Now look at a horse. It's something else entirely. The graceful sweep of neck, the dips and arcs of gleaming muscle, all strong planes and sensitive angles, and then the way it floats and frisks. It's enough to make you believe in God. And besides the beauty, the emotional intelligence, have you ever stood up close to a dozing horse and watched how its ears droop sideways? How sometimes the bottom lip will drop, the inside smooth and pink, the outside soft and whiskered, and just dangle there. And if you move slowly and are gentle enough, you can take that lip and wobble it in your fingers. That's a thing, highly underrated. I won't try to convert the non-believers, but if you think horses are average, I have only one thing to say. You're wrong.
I love that part. Cool. Great choice.
Great.
So, titled Unleashed, what does that mean to you?
So it actually was not the title for a long time. The working title was Doing Little, which was a play on Dr. Dolittle. And it was a memoir of textbooks, Tinder, and Other Unreliable Tools, I think was the initial title. And that kind of got a little bit of resistance from the publishers, and I wasn't really sure what to do. And I just thought about it, and I was trying to kind of have a little bit of a play on words, and then Unleashed just kind of came and it seemed right. And we were still trying to figure out textbooks, Tinder, and the tea just wasn't coming. So then I did a bit of brainstorming and came out with the Heartache, Hairballs and Hope.
No, it's a great title. I like it. It obviously has multiple meanings and can mean a lot too.
Yeah, so it was kind of like the Unleashed, like coming off the leash, and obviously coming out with all the truth and the kind of other, uncovering the other side, but also obviously the pun.
So we talk a lot on this podcast about life of vets, the difficulties, the good stuff. We try and give enough context to the work that we do. Tell me from your experience, you've worked abroad, you worked in the UK, in Dubai, in South Africa. Have some of these stories, have they been inspired by actual consults that you've seen? Are these things that you wrote down at the time, or are you trying to recall those memories?
Some of them, there were moments where things were like in my diary, or maybe I'd written a small blog. The last chapter is actually from a blog that I wrote quite a long time ago. Funnily enough, it just seemed like the way to end the book. I kind of knew where I was leading up to my final 3 sentences. I knew what they were from quite early on in the book. Some of it was trying to recall, but, we all have those memories that are quite clear to us. And the nice thing about memoir as well is it is an impression of a time. It's not the same as nonfiction like autobiography where you have to be completely exact. So there wasn't that pressure to be every single word of dialogue had to be exactly the same, although there certainly are conversations that are word for word that I remember that clearly. But for in between it is okay to kind of just add the dialogue from the way you think it went, and that's kind of okay. You have that little bit of leeway. That's
very interesting. And when you have, say, a pet owner reading it, what do you hope that they're going to get from this book?
I really hope that they'll just understand the perspective of vets a little bit more, because I think vets are really quite misunderstood, and it's something that really does irk me a little bit, because I don't know if it's ever since, what was it? There was that Carte Blanche episode, and to be honest, that really rubbed me up the wrong way. I've never kind of forgiven them for that, because it felt like really one-sided journalism at the time, and I've really hoped that this would show a little bit more of the truth. Facebook is always trying to make out that there's some big conspiracy theory where vets are just trying to make money. And it always has so many comments. And I just find it actually quite sickening, because there is a mental health crisis within veterinarians that people don't seem to realize. And vets are actually trying their best. No one has done this for the money. If they were going to do it for the money, they didn't choose very well. Like, honestly, they could have been investing or banking or, all sorts of things that would have been, a lot easier than being a vet. So I just hope that they maybe understand that there's a side that is quite difficult, and that we really do have the animal's best interest at heart.
You look at me, I look at you, I see the love in your eyes. I'm lost.
Health you can see, love you can feel. UltraPet, the science of love.
Obviously, this book has appealed. A lot of your colleagues have already read it and have given you that incredible feedback. What are some of the feedback comments that they've given you? Has it been that it's just been so relatable?
Yeah, I think relatable, and people have really enjoyed the humor. And I think for South Africans, they've really enjoyed looking back at Onderstepoort. It's made them quite nostalgic, a lot of them. But I think, they've really been happy that there's just that kind of shining a light into our experience. But there's also been feedback from non-vets. And actually last night I got such a lovely message from a girl who I've never met, who is in high school. And she said it just felt like it opened up the world for her, because she suddenly saw these possibilities and could see herself in this role and could relate so much to what I was saying. And it was really special, actually. It kind of gave her some clarity, which was really great.
That is great feedback.
Yeah, it was really special, because there's obviously always going to be people who don't like the book. And that is something that I have to just be okay with, because that's how it goes. So to have those few readers who really do, like, if it does really resonate with someone or help them in any way, it's really special. And you've got to just hold on to that.
I can't imagine people not liking the book. I mean, even in terms of some of the clients you are, it obviously definitely resonated. Some of the, I don't want to give any of the stories away, but some of the consults that you experience, you're like, oh my word, you can just picture yourself in that moment and go like, I think it's happened to most of us vets. And it's great to give that kind of insight into, like you say, the difficulties, what goes through your thought process. Yeah. But there's a lot of vulnerability in there. How easy was it to tap into that vulnerability?
There were times when it was really hard, and I had to stop. I stopped for about a year when I had my second child, and that was I just couldn't. I was too tired to kind of find that creative spark, and there was other things going on. But when I started again, I did feel vulnerable, and it was hard to start again. Without Mike, my writing coach, I don't know if I would have, to be honest, because it had been sitting in the drawer for a long time. And it just felt very vulnerable. And in a year, you also grow up a bit. So you're like, oh, am I going to be received? Is that who I am still? But I'm so glad I carried on. And once I got into it, it was a lot easier again. But yeah, it is a vulnerable thing. And also because you have to be honest. And there are times when you have to admit that maybe you didn't do everything right. Like there was a time I had to admit, and it was hard for me to write it. But at OP, I basically thought that the antibiotic we'd given a dog was long-acting, and it wasn't. And so the dog had a big orthopedic surgery, and it had missed like 24 hours of post-operative antibiotic care, and it was horrendous. The dog was fine, but it shook me to my core at the time. And I mean, I visited that dog in ICU morning and night and took her chicken she loved me so much by the end. It was crazy. I remember when one of the other students had her, he was walking her across front lawn and she just ripped out of his hands. She just came running for me, which was not ideal on her freshly operated leg. But she was fine, but it really shook me at the time, and it was scary to write it down. But it happened, and you have to be, if your readers are going to trust you, they have to know that you're telling them the truth. And so I did try to kind of be vulnerable in that way.
I mean, one of the things I totally admire about you as a veterinarian is the fact that you saw large, small, dealing with hamsters and, and animals of all sizes, which obviously at this point in our career, a lot of people have gone into one
so
or the
for
other.
sure, like now I think I would battle more with the horses for sure. But when you're a young vet, you're fresh out of OP and you're finding where you're going. And I think that's also why it was nice to write about those years, because I wasn't dealing with necessarily the most technical cases, like medical cases like we would be now. It was more of a broad impression of veterinary as a whole, which was really fun.
Is that something you would recommend for vet students listening?
Yeah, I think if you don't know where you're going, if you're not absolutely sure, then I really think doing a bit of mixed practice, as long as it's a good practice, because you obviously learn habits from wherever you are. So try and go to a practice that has good, they have a high standard of care. But I think in SA that's not hard to do. And if you do mixed, it's fun. You may find that you really love something you didn't expect, and it was really fun. I think for me it was just really great life experience.
What would you say is like the biggest lesson you learned from your experience in terms of as a veterinarian?
Sure. I think as time goes on, you kind of start figuring out what kind of doctor you want to be. And there's all these sort of small moments that sort of you start being more aware of where you are on the spectrum. And I think I mentioned it in the book, and I said, how far are you going to chase a diagnosis if the animal's suffering? Because there is a point where you're like, we don't know exactly what's going on, or, but the animal's really, really battling. Like, are you going to push for every single diagnostic test to be done if it's looking like the dog is probably going to die anyway? Or, those kind of decisions. They're like little decisions that different vets may make different decisions. And I think something that I'm just a GP vet, I'm really not a specialist, and I think there's so many vets that have better stories than me, I'm sure. I was just giving an overall impression, but something that became important to me very early on was just the animal experience, because pain was always really high on my list to just control pain. It's a big priority. And also just to remember that the animals don't know why they're there. So to try and slow down and just remember to be patient and be gentle and be soft and give them that little bit of time, because that's their experience. And some of these animals may not make it. So this time is really precious to them. And so make it not a hard time. Just to remember that. We see so many animals. And so that became quite a priority for me.
That is so true. And it's actually a very good reminder.
Yeah.
We're all rushing around and trying to get through and get to the next case. But that's
Yeah.
a very good point.
I mean, most vets obviously have that value. But yeah, I guess that was something that became clear to me as time went on, that it was quite a priority, yeah.
So you made mention of, obviously, mental health. It's obviously a big buzzword at the moment,
Yes.
particularly in the vet space. And I think just in life generally. How does it play out for you? How do you manage your own mental health? Has the writing been a form of therapy?
Yeah, I would say it has been. What's been so special is that I think when we lose patients along the way, and that is really hard, obviously, particularly ones, you often there are patients that you remember or you think, could it have played out differently? Or there are always going to be sometimes where there's heartbreak. And it's hard to just carry on day after day. To have this as a kind of like, we remember those animals, we remember those moments. It was really lovely to kind of feel like, they were being seen and the plight of the veterinarian was being recognized in that moment. So that was really therapeutic, actually. Just that sort of feeling of like sharing, I guess.
I admired especially, and obviously it's very easy for the stories that are a bit more emotive, the working for difficult practice owners or dealing
Yes.
with a difficult client. I mean, those obviously really resonate
Yes.
because
So
difficult
real.
times do.
Absolutely.
Don't they?
Yeah.
But what would you advise veterinarians, obviously, when they're starting out their career? How would you advise they manage that situation?
I think it's really helpful if you have a mentor and if you look at somebody who you admire in the way they deal with clients. I can clearly remember actually within my first job, because you're trying to find that, this is such a ridiculous story, but I remember visualizing, I'd drive into the parking lot and I'd be like, visualize a bubble around yourself, but it's not a glass bubble because it can't break. It's just a little bendy bubble that is like your space and it's going to be professional but friendly. And I used to actually kind of visualize it, which sounds ridiculous. But I think people just want to be spoken to like people. And if you can bring that kind of element into it, it really helps. I guess, there was actually a horse vet called Tom who worked in the area in Summerfeld. He doesn't anymore. But he had a really wonderful way with clients and he would really just chat to them. And, I remember my mom saying, because he was a young vet at the time, and sometimes he didn't have the answers and he'd have to phone his boss. But no one ever minded because he was so upfront about it. He would just say, I'm actually not sure. So I'm just going to call my boss and we'll just have a little chat. And everybody loved him. And it was quite a lesson to me. I was still a student at that time. But I kind of could see how if you could just bring yourself, your real self into it, people respond to that.
I think you're saying that, it obviously makes me think whether I bring my real self. I mean, there is an element of not wanting to be too vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Putting on a bit of
course.
Armor.
Yes, and there are times when you have to.
Yeah.
Of course there are,
What's the hardest thing about the job for you? Because I mean, and I'm not trying to set you up here because, I ask this question to a lot of my podcast guests, and I think you ask a pet owner, they'll say something generally very different. What was yours?
The hardest part of the job, I mean, I guess there are animals that you can't help, and that can be really hard. There's a dog in the book that comes up that I remember, who I was trying my best, but the owner couldn't afford to go to a specialist. And that's really hard because you reach that point where you're like, should I be trying to spend my money on this? Like, you actually care about that patient so much, but you also, this is your job and you can't do that for that is really hard. So I guess just trying your best, and sometimes that's not good enough, and that's really, really hard. I would say for me, that's probably the toughest.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I must say, I think you will watch the Instagram or the TikTok reels, and it's leaving a euthanasia to go to a puppy thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, that difficult, totally, and I'm not taking that away from anybody who said that
Yes.
it's their most difficult moment. But I think the reality is often those cases that you're really trying your best,
Yeah.
and finances have reached the limitation, or even owners reach that
Yeah.
emotional limitation. They like, I
Completely.
can't do, and you're going like, just let me.
Yes.
You just want to.
It's so hard.
You just want to recover them to
Yeah.
good health.
Yeah.
It can be a really tough space.
Yeah, and I mean, some things really are expensive, and it's nobody's fault. You know, if you've got huge surgeries, spinal surgeries, things like that, that's not something a GP vet can do. And it involves MRIs, which are obviously hugely expensive. And, you know, so yeah, it's hard. And somehow it's different because with people, I don't know, animals just feel like they kind of belong to everyone somehow, so much more than people do. So when you go to the doctor, you don't have that same expectation, but people expect so much of their vets. So that is hard. And you can sometimes get obviously flack from clients as well with expenses. You would know all about that being a practice owner, and it's really hard.
I mean, you dealt with some angry clients, and I mean, you talk about it in the book. You've got a very nice way of dealing with it. Is this something that you've learned? Is it something that you take through sort of into your future consults in terms of?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think you have to have a little bit of humor about it, you know, because you are trying your best, and some people are going to get angry. I suppose you just have to kind of take it that you're not always going to be everybody's favorite. And sometimes, I mean, I think I talk about a skin case where the man was just getting so frustrated. And it was the days before we had kind of the same artillery of skin medication we have now, and skins were frustrating. So I always make a big point, or I certainly did. Skins are very frustrating cases. They take a long time, and it's the same old thing that you just keep repeating because you know what's going to happen. And that often you're on the receiving end of their frustration. I guess just trying to have a thick skin through those moments, and maybe being able to have a laugh about it with a colleague sometimes, as horrible as that sounds. But sometimes humor is our coping mechanism, and that's just the way it is.
And how is practicing in South Africa different to practicing abroad?
So it's quite interesting because it actually is quite different. So the standard of veterinary care in South Africa is really high, and that is something that I've realized the more I've been away. We have great vets here, and it's such a lovely sort of thing to know. And jobs are available for us all over the world, which is really great. So South Africa is wonderful in that sense. Where it falls behind the UK is that as much as our welfare is trying its best, they're under a lot more pressure than in the UK. The welfare is enough support for the number of strays and things that they have, whereas here we're obviously struggling with that. And in the UK they have a lot more health insurance, which really helps as well, whereas that's not as common here. So financially the things are more of a struggle. You obviously do have cases of violence towards animals here more, which is just the absolute worst part of veterinary science. Actually, now that I think about it, that's just the absolute worst. So we do see that sometimes here, which is terrible. Not that often, but it is something. So I would say that's kind of South Africa. And then the UK is, it's quite cushy in that you have that often a bit more support, which is really nice. And in the Middle East, it's also interesting. You don't often have as much medical aid. The practices tend to offer that individually. So they have like kind of policies that you can take. But in general, I found that the veterinary care there is very variable. So you have some good vet practices, but a lot of them are really not of a high standard at all. And there are like terrible stories of, just terribly botched spays and animals that's, like really, really bad. I remember a friend of mine it was a rescue animal. So he went to one of the cheaper practices, and it had an injury on one leg, but it ended up having to have the other leg amputated because the drip went so badly septic because they'd left it in for so long. I mean, just like scary, scary stories. Wow. So yeah, the UAE has got a way to go, and also just the animal culture there. It can be quite hard because animals can be seen as a bit of a commodity, so that's really hard as well. So I go into that a little bit in the book as well. There's differences. It's quite interesting, and of course the diseases as well. You have different disease processes, obviously, with different weather and that kind of thing.
That must be quite challenging, like especially when you're traveling to like slip into your, this is what I need to, you don't have to worry about biliary and Ehrlichia in the UK.
It's so weird to me. In the UK, they don't know how to do blood smears, most of them. And it's just like so crazy. Like, how do you do this without that?
No, I agree. It's very different. I mean, there's one chapter, again, I want to talk about parts of it that I loved, and we can do that off air. But yeah, there's one part and where you're talking about sleeping in the on-call bed. And I mean, that really resonated because obviously I qualified in the UK and I'd spent a few years working there before I came back to South Africa. But it's so nice to kind of hear the differences. Often, you know, a lot of it very positive, but very funny. Very humorous.
Yes. And the animals too, actually. One thing I found really interesting is like, because animals obviously are quite consistent between places, and that's so lovely because their language is their language and it's universal. But like, for example, Cocker Spaniels here can be a little bit snappy, I found, and in the UK they are just so soppy. So it's obviously just different gene pools, but really like interesting. Have you also noticed that? Like differences like that are so fascinating. It's fascinating.
No, it is. It's incredible. And I mean, obviously in the UK, always the thing that sticks with me about how animals are different, or dogs are different, I can't say animals because cats don't have the same, is that they walked. And so, you know, obviously being back in South Africa, I know a lot of South Africans walk their dog and, you know, great. I think it's phenomenal. But a lot of them sit behind the fence.
Yes, because they've got these big gardens.
Yes, they're like, they self-exercise. You're like, no, they don't. They really don't. But obviously the commitment of you know, British keeping them possibly in smaller properties and just being really dedicated to those twice daily walks and walking. And they're far more socialized in that regard.
Completely. Getting on the trains, all of that stuff.
But they still talk dog.
Yeah, they do.
So obviously you are in a different chapter of your life to the stuff you discuss in your book. What are you most proud of in this chapter of your life?
Sure. I think, you know, it's been a really different journey, and I've really struggled actually living in Dubai. That was really hard for me for the first few years, and I'm not entirely even sure why, but I really missed home a lot. And I really missed not working, and becoming a mom initially, as wonderful as it is, you find this kind of like, there's this sort of shifting of your identity, and that was hard. And there was a period there where things felt quite tough actually. And I say that knowing how privileged I am, but it did feel hard and a bit lonely. And I think I'm just happy. It all feels so much easier now. I kind of got through it, but I'm really happy that I started doing those writing competitions, and I was proactive about doing something that made me feel like myself again. And I obviously got registered to work again, and things came slowly together again. But yeah, I guess I'm just happy that I came through. And I mean, now I actually quite enjoy Dubai, and it's not so hard to go back like it used to be. So I think I'm just proud that I've adjusted really. It doesn't sound like a great achievement, but it was a period of life. And finding that balance again has been great.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've spoken off air about imposter syndrome. I mean, there's a lot of mental health challenges within our profession, but also just as individuals, as women, as mothers.
Yeah.
Has your journey been
one
of
self-discovery?
So
much imposter syndrome, like just so much. You know, I think when you don't practice for a little while, then when you start again, you feel. I think I said once, I'm so rusty, I could give you tetanus. But you know, so doing that, coming back into work you get that. It's always been fine, and vets are so supportive, and you know, it's kind of like riding a bike, you know, but that is a big thing. And then obviously with the writing, that's huge. Like, and I really am amazed at how it's done, to be quite honest, because I really have had times where I've thought, why does anyone care about the ramblings of some random person, you know? So it does actually blow my mind that it was like book of the month. So yeah, that imposter syndrome is also just wild. And yeah, I guess even with being a mom, you know, there's so much pressure on moms these days to just do everything right, and so many differing opinions on how you're meant to do it. And yeah, and it starts from very young. It really does. It's ridiculous, you know, whether it's, you know, how did you do it, and what was your birth journey like, and did you breastfeed, and for how long, and you know, is your baby sitting? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, and it's a lot easier with the second one because you kind of are more relaxed about it. But it is hard, and you question yourself as a mom. I think, well, I do certainly every day. Am I doing this right? And they keep growing. So just as soon as you feel like you've got a handle on one age, suddenly there's a whole new lot of things to think about. And my little girl, she asks a lot of questions about things, and so every day, or just about, I'm like, oh, how am I gonna deal with this one?
Another day.
Did I do it right? You know. So yeah,
she's
imposter syndrome is real. It really is.
Yeah, no, it is. It's crazy. I mean, I can see it and I can witness it in the way even that we've spoken about this book, which is phenomenal. I mean, and you're like, well, it's how difficult is it to actually just revel in the good times? And
there are just moments that are great, I guess. And yeah, I would say it goes, you kind of will have like a moment where you're like, oh, that was amazing. And I got such a good message and that was so special. And then just a little bit later, you're like, a lot of people are reading this book and no one's really said anything. Is that okay? I think most people read a book and they read the book and that's great and that's their support, and they maybe don't realize that some authors are quite needy and anxious, So you're kind of like sitting there like, is this okay? But, it's great to have it in the shelves, and the people that have been supportive about it have been so supportive, and it's been very special. I've always, my whole life, I've wanted to have a book with my name on it in the store, and so that's kind of crazy that it actually happened.
And you're walking into exclusive books, and there it is. It's everywhere. I mean,
it's great. It's been so fun.
Great. The dog on the front of the book, where does that come from?
So they chose a golden retriever. It's not actually a dog that I know, but they chose a golden retriever just because they're so universally appealing. I mean, everybody loves a golden, right?
Yeah.
But it was quite special because my dog, Otis, is a kind of golden cross. He's a rescue, but he's got that kind of blonde look. So it was quite cool. And a lot of people said, is that Otis? And I was like, no. That's a purebred, somebody's puppy. But the real giveaway is the nails in the book, because
they're not yours.
I even talk about how I have scruffy nails in the book. And then the first thing I said, I was like, I love this cover, but the nails are quite manicured. And my friends noticed too.
So they said,
I don't think that's Caity.
I think we need to send you off for a manicure. French manicure.
Yeah, I'm just hiding them over here.
So I, as a huge fan now, got to the end of the book, and as I said to you, I was like, but when's the next one coming out? Like, I want to know what happens. Like,
yes,
it's one of those, obviously it doesn't just for the readers who go, oh no, it's one of those going to leave you on a cliffhanger. It doesn't. It's a great book in terms of finalizing the stories, but it does leave you wanting more.
Yeah.
Can we get more?
I mean, it's so interesting. Would you want more of the veterinary stories?
Yes, more and more of your life. I think the wonderful thing about this book, and I'm talking to my listeners now, is that there are just so many parts to it. Obviously, I love it in the sense that it brings back phenomenal memories, some not good, some really, really great. It's relatable in terms of the love that you've had, not only for your patients, but your own pets. Yeah. And then it talks about your life, friendships, relationships with your parents, families, the dynamics. It really encompasses so much of, I think,
that was so interesting for me, because I really thought that was like, maybe shouldn't be in the book. And from Mike to the editors to an agent I spoke to overseas to Pan Macmillan, they were all like, we want that stuff. Yes. We need that stuff in it. So that was really interesting for me. And in fact, the last lot of the book that I wrote was actually just filling in more of that stuff, which they really wanted.
Delighted.
So, because that stuff does feel vulnerable. Yes. You're kind of like, why does anyone care? But I suppose it kind of rounds the whole picture, and it's part of it, But yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I hadn't really ever thought about doing more veterinary. I'd kind of always thought, now I've learned so much and I'm going to now move on to fiction. But what was interesting in this book was when I wrote real people, it really opened my eyes to how different they would be to fictional characters I wrote. Real people are so vivid. They're so unexpected in what they do. They surprise you and they make you laugh, and they don't finish their sentences, because every time I was writing dialogue, I was really hearing that person in my head, and that was really fun. I really like dialogue, actually. So it really kind of opened my eyes, and I did think, can I go to fiction now? Because I've had this real experience of people and writing them. And I mean, obviously there's some wonderful characters in this book, and I've met some hilarious, wonderful people on the way, and it was so much fun writing them. And I don't know if you can come up with that easily, it's so, they're magical. So it's made me think quite seriously about whether I should continue with nonfiction. At this stage, I'm not really sure.
You're very, very good at what you're doing. And obviously we've now very invested in those characters. And obviously, you know, there are many more characters that you're coming across and you're living now. I mean, even raising children and you know, the balance between trying to be a phenomenal mother and trying to have a successful career and you know, even writing a book, the process of writing. You know, these are all great stories that we hope. I mean, as much as we all say, we could write a book, we mean as in very briefly in our head. Because the reality is that none of us can write. We might provide you with some stories through the debriefs of our consults, but your book is exceptional.
Thank you so much, really.
You did a great job. So what next?
So in terms of writing, you mean?
So are you going to do some shorter stuff? Or I mean, this is a big thing too.
Now I really wanted to come up with a plot for a novel. And it has been kind of escaping me for a while. I've been like really mulling it over. And I think it's because when you go into fiction, you've really got to kind of choose your type of fiction. Like I will never be a crime writer, but then it's like, do you go into literary fiction or do you go into like romance or, you know, it feels like you're kind of redefining yourself all over again. And those are kind of questions that I'm battling with a little bit. I mean, it's all kind of on the back burner. I don't feel any pressing urgency to get to it, but it is important to me and it is something that I want to do, definitely. So those are kind of all the questions I'm asking myself at the moment. I'm trying to do quite a lot of reading because I think that really can open your eyes and I'm trying to identify which books I like and why I like them and kind of following along with that just for now.
And I mean, you have a Substack account and there is a lot of content on there because this is not just your first writing. So those listening who want to get a taste of it.
I was kind of limiting what else I put on because I felt like a lot of followers I had were for the book and I didn't want to put them off. So I was quite careful about not doing too many. But I mean, I have put other stories on and a lot of people do actually seem to enjoy all of it. So I'll probably be carrying on. The poetry has got so whack since AI started. It's just gone off the charts.
Let's talk about that story. Because you came second in a competition.
Yeah, it was so crazy.
Who came first?
Okay, so it's this competition in Dubai. And I have to say I entered it for the money because I was like, I want to win this or I want to try because it's good money and it's a small pool in Dubai. So let's give this a try. And I know that's not maybe like it sounds like a sellout, but I was like, sure. And it was for writing a fairy tale, which also is not something that I would choose to do. But I researched fairy tales and apparently they always have morals in them and they often have a big connection to nature and all of this stuff. So anyway, I had this idea while I was cooking one night about what about if there was a tree and the tree in the forest had a spirit in it and it wanted to trade your memories for material things and what that would lead to. So it kind of gets a little bit spooky because the person keeps losing their memories and getting stuff. And anyway, that was my story. But I also wanted to see, because ChatGPT was quite new, what would come up. And so I asked ChatGPT for a fairy tale. And when I came second, I read the first place fairy tale and it was ChatGPT's fairy tale, which was just crazy to me. And I even saw, they said, where did you get your inspiration? And I mean, she came up with something and I was like, what? I literally read your story on ChatGPT. You know, like really, really, it was the same. So anyway, that was crazy. But as AI has come, you know, more and more to the forefront, and it's a concern I think a lot of writers have, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. It really is, it's quite alarming because AI is obviously advancing all the time. But in my own writing, I can say that it's become a lot more out there because AI tends to be quite twee, I guess, would be how I would say it. It's quite like everything's got its neat little ending and its cute little meaning, and that tends to be how it does it. And so I've been writing some pretty crazy poetry. I mean, the one was called If You Could Have Sex With Any Song, which actually did very well in a competition. And then I've got another one which is out to see if it comes anywhere, and it is it's called A Version of Hell Where You're Stuck in an Elevator with the mothers of all your ex-boyfriends. And I'm telling you now, I would never have thought of that if I wasn't like anti-AI, because I know that ChatGPT would never write that poem.
Definitely not something they would have come up with in terms of a plot.
So yeah, that kind of stuff has been coming out of me, and I haven't actually been seeking it. I think it's just like this inner rebellion against it, you know, because it is just, it's crazy. So yeah, that's been quite fun.
is there anything that was totally off limits that you were like, this has gone too far, that maybe was removed from your book?
It was interesting because when they said to me, can we have more of your personal life? I had to say to Andrea, who was phenomenal. I really trusted her with this whole process. She was so amazing, from Pan Macmillan. And I said, like, how deep do you want me to go? Because there's a lot there. And I do feel vulnerable about it, but I also can share. And we discussed certain things, and we decided kind of on the level that I would keep it together. Because I think, there are, I guess, to be quite honest with you, there are certainly relationships I had that did not come into this book because they were too significant in my life, if I can put it that way. And I just didn't want to go there really. So there were certainly, I wanted to keep this at a level where it was fun for people to read, but it was not quite bearing everything. And funny enough, there was nothing in the veterinary side of things that was taboo. There was one section where it's quite a horrible scene, but I came across a hijacking, and there was quite a racist sort of incident, and there was a lot of, that was really hard to write. To write about any kind of political thing is very difficult, and I'm very aware of my position in any kind of commentary on the government as a privileged white woman. So that's really difficult, and I never wanted this to be in any way a political book. But if you write anything, you have some kind of political stance. If you're apolitical, that's also saying something about you. But I mean, it was just a word or two here where they kind of guided me to how to tweak things. There was to kind of not have a direct quote of what was said. And to be honest, otherwise not really. And I was surprised because they asked for more and they said they were going to cut, but they didn't really cut much. They just kind of kept it. So nothing was really taken out. I didn't really feel like there was anything that was exactly taboo. I was just sort of picking my lines, I suppose.
Was it important to you to represent South Africa?
Yes. So I was approached through Instagram by a literary agent in the UK from a very big literary agency, and it was so exciting, and I really thought this is going to be my big break. And she actually was quite, in the end, almost damaging. She had a lot of criticism of the book. She'd been so excited about it and said she loved it, and then she kind of said it was too South African, and she said, why do people care? Like, if she compared it to Educated, that amazing memoir, and I'm like, well, I'm not that person at all, so like I can't write that. And it was really hard. I mean, she actually said to me, do you not think you should just stop and write fiction? And I was kind of like, well, I didn't ask you for your opinion, and you've really like broken me down here. And then I think as a reaction to that, I just thought it's not going to probably be well received overseas. And actually, I am South African and I love South Africans, and I want to represent us. So then I really leaned into South Africa, and it was so fun. I mean, South Africans are so funny, and the way they speak is so great. And so I really went into it. And I mean, to be honest, I did make it a bit less accessible to overseas readers. I've sent it to a couple of people in the UK, and like the first page has the word Here in it. So I've like circled it and said, this means like, oh God, or whatever.
Google Translate can help.
Yeah, exactly. And there were times where, and I just thought, I'm just doing this because actually I'm writing this for me and for my people, and that's us,
And it's so expressive.
Yeah, and I think we often don't get those books because we get so many international titles, and South African publishers are trying their best, but why not just lean into it? So that's what I did.
And you have a true love of this area. I mean, you speak very fondly. This is your hometown.
Yeah, it is. And I love this area. It's got such an amazing community, and yeah, I've been here a long time. My gran was here, and then we moved here, and yeah, it's very special to me.
Yeah, no, it's so nice to have you home. I think we would definitely love to have you, especially now that people are getting to know you. You're going to become a complete celebrity vet.
Oh, God.
Might be safer to be in Dubai.
Maybe, yeah. I'll just cover my badge when I work.
You haven't got your face on
yeah,
there,
that's
but
true.
You are putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling now? Obviously, is there a bit of an anticlimax? Do you get that when something's published and it's done? Does it feel like the end of exams?
It's not yet, to be honest. I'm going to the Franschhoek Literary Festival in a few weeks, and I'm so excited about that because it just sounds like such a lovely time. I mean, it's books and wine and writers and all these talks
things
you can go to, and it just sounds like great. So I'm really excited about that. Possibly after that, there'll probably be a bit of like a come down. But It's been a really exciting time. I mean, I've been asked for quite a few interviews and to chat about the book, and there's been a lot of feedback. So it's been very fun. I think for me more, it's that I just would quite like to get into something new, and I haven't quite decided what that is. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's that end of exams feeling. It's been really fun. And, when you have a family, you can't get too invested in it in all. It's like wonderful, but you can't, it's not the only wave you're riding. So that protects you as well.
And are there any people in your life who have supported this book that you want to make mention of?
Well, Andy, obviously my husband, has been absolutely amazing because he supported me when this book was really just a manuscript. I mean, I don't even think we could call it that. It was just something I was doing. And I think he could see that I was struggling in Dubai and I needed something else. And he gave me time to do it. And when you have little kids, that's not always easy. And it was not something that was, bringing in an income. It wasn't like, it was just something for me, and he supported it. And yeah, so definitely him. And Mike, my writing coach, was amazing at bringing the book. Whenever I went off track, he kind of brought me back again. And yeah, no, it had a lot of support, and I was very lucky.
I definitely think it's something, obviously, you talk about being a mother, that you're going to be proud to show your girls. At what age do you reckon they'll have access to?
It's actually PG-16, and my nephew tried to read the first chapter the other day, and I nearly had a heart attack. But I guess when they're about 16, I'll stick to it. I was quite chuffed actually to have a book that's PG-16. I don't even watch movies hardly that are PG-16, so I felt kind of hardcore.
So don't give it to your teenage daughter.
Yeah, maybe not yet.
So where can people find you? How can they support you? What is the best way to support you and show that they've enjoyed your book?
So messages are really appreciated, whether it's on Instagram or Substack. My Substack is caity.venniker.substack.com, which maybe we could put somewhere.
We'll put in the link notes.
Yeah, and then Instagram is Caity Venniker. So yeah, that's always great. And if you do enjoy it, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And one thing that was super cool is if you'd like to rate it on either Amazon or Goodreads or anywhere really, it really does help.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It does, yeah.
Appreciate, like you say, I think they read and they're like, great. Or,
and it can dilute the bad reviews, hopefully.
No, it won't be bad reviews. Caity, thank you. Thank you for answering all my crazy questions.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a lovely chat.
Yeah, it's always lovely chatting to you. And I mean, I can't recommend this book, and it's not because I know you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. And
thank you. It's been such a huge support.
Yeah, it's. I'd love to hear some feedback on it. I can pass it on to Caity, but please, share your thoughts. Tell us what you think of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
It's been great. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode on the Pause and Effect podcast. If you found the discussion helpful, please like, share, and follow our podcasts. Don't forget to leave us a comment or review. We love hearing from our listeners. Remember, you can listen to us on your preferred podcast platform. Welcome back to Just for Pets. You're with Dr. Cara.
Hi, Doc. It's Justin the Jack Rossi here, and boy, am I itchy.
Are you on a hypoallergenic diet?
Hyper what now?
Changing to a special diet will really help. And Just for Pets have a massive range. And flea and tick medication, special shampoo.
Ooh, how quick can I get some?
Order today and we'll deliver pronto.
I feel better already.
Justforpets.co.za. Vet approved, pet adored. Get it all to your door.